The Youth Sports Project is a journey through the fields, gyms, courts, and neighborhoods where American kids have learned to compete, struggle, and grow. From sandlots to select teams, from volunteer coaches to billion-dollar industries, we're exploring how youth sports shaped generations and how they've changed the country along the way. This is the Youth Sports Project podcast. All right, welcome to the Youth Sports Project. I am so excited today to talk with Julie McCleery and Hannah Olson about youth sports and why they matter. Julie, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Well, I am the co-director of the Center for Leadership in Athletics with Hannah. So I have been at the center for about 12 years, and my primary role there has been a research role, but also maybe more so research to practice role. So I spent a lot of time researching youth sports, coaching women in sports, and then helping to develop interventions projects that are based on the research and that are community informed, and to sort of build better, more joyful spaces for sports and physical activity for kids. So that's my current work, and I spent a lot of years coaching everything from elite level rowing to Little League baseball. I'm not coaching right now, but enjoyed that while my kids were growing up, and I still have one kiddo playing sports in college that I get to watch. And yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Thanks, Julie. Hannah, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for us?
Yes, thanks for having us today. I appreciate it. Hannah Olson, co-director with Julie, as she mentioned. And at the center, I do a lot of the practical application work. So I take a lot of the research that Julie and our research team does, and then try to take it to schools and community organizations and to coaches and translate it into curriculum, in addition to running our graduate program in athletic leadership and teaching undergraduate courses. So we dabble in a little bit of everything at the center, from research to community practice to teaching within the university. We're situated in the College of Education. So we think a lot about how athletics can be a vehicle for positive outcomes for youth and communities is our grounding. And I'm engaged in the work because I have a deep history in athletics. I'm a King County kid, since we're talking about King County, but grew up in the area and played a whole bunch of different sports. Chose softball to play collegiately, and have coached for about 25 years. And that has made a transition, anything from high school and select sports, recreational and community centers. And now I have the opportunity to coach my own kids. So they are grade schoolers right now, and I'm coaching at the moment. I have 4 teams. So
My gosh.
the moment, like moving
Go
and
on now.
shaking around, but it's a good laboratory for a lot of the things that we're discussing and learning about and teaching.
Yeah, holy smokes. You have 4 teams you're coaching right now.
I am. Yeah, we're in the weird intersection of basketball
Yeah,
and softball and baseball season.
I
So
know.
yeah, I'm ready for March to wrap up, I guess.
Totally. Well, I also want to say Danny's here with us. Danny Williams, sports reporter with the UW Daily and a co-researcher on this project. Danny, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So I think one of the things that Danny and I find a ton of meaning in is starting these conversations with, what did you play? And I'm not saying Julie was an elite level national rower. Hannah, obviously extremely talented in softball. You played this well through many, many years. But back when you were little, you started playing, what did you play? Why did you play it? And what did you like about it? Julie, you want to start us off?
I'm just trying to think back to a time when I just played, because I was, for that era, I was involved in structured stuff pretty early on, I would say, mostly gymnastics, which I think, a lot of girls my age did gymnastics growing up. So I feel like if you saw me as a little kid, you would see me doing cartwheels and back handsprings. And so I was doing structured gymnastics, but also if I was just out at a park or watching my brother's soccer game, I was tumbling on the sideline. So that was just sort of me, always in motion, always trying to learn a new skill. I remember the summer that I just worked on my handstands all summer to see how long I could hold them. Just mastering things. that was fun for me.
Usually I see a pathway between like where someone started and where they ended up in their athletic career, but I'm imagining you doing a handstand in a boat
In
and
the
that
boat.
doesn't
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that the through line is gymnastics teaches you really good proprioception. And so you know how to move your body and to respond to critique in any sport, right? And make adjustments. And so I think that early grounding and movement made it easy for me to adapt to any sport. And I have played like almost every sport that you can play in some form or fashion. So
yeah.
yeah, that's the through line.
Hannah, what did you play? What did you like to play?
Yeah, I grew up on a mountain, and so there was a lot of time in the woods and building forts and climbing trees. My parents played a lot of recreational and co-ed sports, so spent a lot of time in dugouts and on the side of fields, just taking whatever ball was there and playing with my sister and any other kids that were there. But I think the one that like really grounds me is I was a kickball fanatic in grade school, and I used to run drafts for all of the kids in my grade so we could be more efficient, and we would have tournaments and do different things. And so kickball was a big mainstay for me all through grade school.
I forgot about kickball.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a very clear through line to softball.
Yeah. Sorry, I just thought of one more thing. This is like not important, but my dad was an athletic director. So I spent a lot of time on the sidelines of games. And so I also, my very first like school structured sport that I did was cheerleading, which anybody who knows me now would be like, that's wild. I cannot believe you did that. But like, I was so much wanted to be a cheerleader because I grew up on the sidelines of the football games and that's who I was watching. And so that's what I wanted to do. And it went well with gymnastics, but it only lasted one season. Because I was like, why am I cheering for the people who are playing? I would prefer to be playing.
And that got fixed really quickly, didn't it? Yeah. I know that feeling. I think this is a great time to transition into the why. I think I want to know, and Danny and I have been working to try to figure out, why does youth sports matter? We know why we think youth sports matters. We like youth sports. We like playing. We like watching. You know, these are important things in our lives. But I think I want to know from you, why do youth sports matter? When you talk to people about like, I research sports, there has to be some sort of perception of like, you know, entertainment, right? It's this like extra that's on the side. It's not this essential piece of American life. Like it's not getting people fed, getting people sheltered. What is it about youth sports that's so important to you that you study it, you create better systems for it, and you dive into it head first?
Sure. So I think on a very micro level, it had such an incredible impact on my life. And I was provided so many opportunities, and it impacted who I am today as a educator, a professional mom, a partner, like all of those things. And so my personal experience kind of propelled me into the space. And I believe in this power of sport when it's done well, and that there are caring adults, we hope, that have some training. I know we'll talk about that, but some caring adults in the space that are prepared to help build those environments that kids can thrive. Do you think sport is this really interesting cross-section place where we have health and wellness that is crossing over with social cultural spaces when we talk about community coming together? And I'm not sure that you see that in a lot of places. And for young people in particular, sport is one of the most important spaces for a lot of kids, maybe more so than their classrooms or their homes or their other extracurriculars. For a lot of them, they just love and like find so much joy in those spaces. And so to me, there's so much power in getting that space right so that they can reap the benefits that that environment has to offer.
Awesome. Julie, I know you have thoughts.
Well, no, I knew that she would do the micro, which means I could do the macro. So yeah, I completely agree that at the micro level for individual kids, when sport is done right, that it's an incredible opportunity to build physical and mental well-being. And I think, that's why we believe in it. But I think when you look at the whole picture, as you are doing at the macro level, it's an important part of our public health system for young people, and it isn't talked about as maybe part of our public health system, but it is really shaping youth physical activity in a lot of ways. So the constraints that I think we'll probably talk about on who is able to access sport is kind of shaping access to general physical activity in inequitable ways. And we should care about that because we should care about health inequities. We should care about the health of all people, the health of King County. We know that girls and immigrant youth and youth with disabilities have less access to physical activity, which means they have less access to the opportunity to build health and well-being through physical activity. And since only about 20% of kids in the county are getting physical activity, we need to think about how youth sports can be done better in order to include more kids so that we can have a healthier population generally. One of the reasons I care about it.
It's a good reason to care. It's a good reason to care. And it's a reason Danny and I care too. And Danny and I were just having this conversation. So Danny, feel free to jump in whenever and ask follow-up questions too. But I think when we started this project, it started to become clear that there were two conversations. There's the conversation about how do we produce higher level athletes, right? Like performance conversations. How do we produce athletes that are going to go play professional sports? And it seems like is like 70% of the conversations that we end up having. And then over here is this, to me, much more interesting and valuable conversation of like, how do we give the average kid access to sport, right?
I think they do happen differentially. Like I have both of them, but I actually try really hard to get people to see how they're part of the same whole, right? Like the more kids we keep in sport for longer, we serve both purposes, right? So if we are not funneling kids out of sports by age 12 or 13, which we are doing because we think we're trying to build better performance, then they stay in and they're healthier. And if we have a bigger, broader foundation that we can build on for elite performance, we're going to have better elite performers. Like we just are. If a kid doesn't have access to play basketball, they are not going to become a great professional basketball player, even if they are the person who is supposed to become that. So by keeping that aperture just really wide for as long as possible, we're serving both purposes. And, we can think about Norway and the Winter Games that everybody's been talking about, which is a model that, we've all looked at for a long time in terms of providing as much access to kids for as long as possible, keeping sports fun. It serves both their general population health and it helps them win Olympic medals.
I think the shift there is from a pyramid model where kids enter from the bottom, and then as you move to the top, you get pushed out of the triangle to a more squared off model where there are different off ramps or access points to different performance levels of sport, from recreation, like all the way up to elite. And so if I'm a 12 or 13-year-old, it isn't that I no longer have the opportunity to participate in my sport. I have different levels and spaces to do that. So we talk about that in our class a lot, like what would that squared off model look like and what's causing the squeeze at the top and different elements. There are a lot that go into it.
Yeah. And, a part of that, Julie, I was reading one of your studies and it talked about how one of the factors not related to any socioeconomic sort of barriers, just related to kids not wanting to play sports, is thinking they aren't good enough to play. And I think that kind of relates to the triangle, right? Where they get pushed out, and then that belief is kind of a part of access as well. And I found that to be pretty interesting and pretty, honestly depressing as well, because these kids just don't believe they have the chance to play, and I think that's a part of it as well.
Yeah, and I think that's an example of how it's shaping the landscape, because youth sports is like taking up so much space in kids' lives that they think if they can't be on a team, they can't be active. Like we aren't providing them with enough other opportunities to ride their bikes, to just play in the park. Like all those free play opportunities have sort of dried up a little bit or less than they were maybe 30 years ago. And so kids don't see themselves being active in ways other than these very structured opportunities, which is really a loss and is really part of driving us towards, more physical inactivity. Screens and phones don't help because they also offer something else for them to do that's engaging. But certainly the overstructuring of sports has a lot to do with it. And kids thinking, well, I can't do that, so I can't be active at all.
Yeah, just the importance of like green spaces, right? It
Yeah.
feels like kids aren't taking advantage of those. Like I know when I was growing up, just, okay, if I was bored, I would just walk to the park right by my house, and play baseball or play football or whatever it was. Yeah, and it just feels like those are getting super underutilized because of the structure that's in place.
Or you had that park near enough you could walk to it,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, it's another thing. Yeah.
Well, and it
Or
depends.
you had a park near enough that you could walk to that didn't have a team playing on it,
Right.
using all the time that you could have used for an unstructured. Like that's one of the challenges here when we have such dense population and growing, is that the parks are being used by people in the structured sports. So there isn't that place for the kids who just want to show up and kind of hang out with friends there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is such a crazy factor because we were talking about this with someone else too, is like if the organized sports, the ones that are like pay to play, high level, like travel club teams, they have the coaches, the administration, and the organization to go and reserve all of those spaces prior to all of these seasons. So they're all set up. They're using, 50% of the space over this time. And that leaves very little space for someone who's like, I want to go play pickup soccer tomorrow, because they've already gotten to those spaces. And I think this sort of leads into something. I want to go back to Norway, right? We can't not talk about Norway. This has been such a huge conversation. Look, Norway does it perfectly. That's all we need to do is just be like Norway, right? Is there any possible scenario where what Norway does could work here? Like, how would we potentially overhaul all of these systems, field access, coaching, over-involved parents, on and on and on. I could name so many. To be like Norway, for lack of a better phrase. Is it possible? Could we even do that here?
I think the starting point that is the largest tension point is that we don't have regulation. Like Norway has federal regulation or like national regulation, and sports in the US is completely unregulated for the most part. You have some smaller, governing entities, but we don't have standardization. We don't necessarily have policy that is engaging in that. So Norway is able to do a lot of what they're able to do by nature of having those standards, standards for coaches, standards for participation. They have agreed upon Bill of Rights for youth, for lack of a better term, but there are kind of these standards. So I think just from a starting point, we talk a lot around our office about what would it look like at state level regulation, or what could be that governing body, but the different levers that need to be pushed on, like they have some levers to do that, or in the US, those don't necessarily exist.
Yeah. I mean, I would say like the only way that it happens is if we truly believe that what is currently happening is a public health crisis.
Yes.
And we say that, and as you pointed out, Kaylee, like we've sort of got these two parts where they are part of one whole, but we see these differential outcomes for kids based on if you're over involved in sports and early specializing. We're seeing, a lot of overuse injury and burnout. And like these are really problematic epidemic level outcomes that young people are experiencing because of the adultification of youth sports. And then on the other side, we have the 40 to 50% or so of kids who are left out, who are having a crisis of physical inactivity.
Yeah.
So we have to get to a point as a country that believes that the health of the kids is more important than making money from running youth sports programs. And very, very sadly, we are not there. Like that to me is like, that's the crux of it. It's like at some point, someone has to say, maybe it's not a good idea to make money off of like everybody getting, little league shoulder and growth plate injuries when they're 12 because we're not doing the right thing by our kids. If we could get to that tipping point, we could put regulations in place, right? It would have to be something like smoking or, one of these sort of public health stories where we all realize this isn't good for us anymore, or like screens. That's one that's happening right now, right?
Yeah.
Like we sort of were all in on screens and now we're seeing the ramifications. And so we're dialing back. And I don't know, what do you all think? Will that ever happen in youth sports, or we just, keep going in this direction?
Well, I don't mean to be sarcastic here, but I feel like that's my specialty. We're so good as Americans at dealing with systemic public health crises and making immediate changes that are part of federal systems, right? Like The chance of this happening to me feels very low, but I like hearing the examples you're giving. Like, we're watching those changes in screen use, right? We're watching classrooms and schools take the step back because they're realizing it's a problem. Years and decades ago, we finally realized maybe we shouldn't be smoking, right? Like, there's good examples of this happening. Maybe in this current 2026 environment, it doesn't feel too possible, but maybe it is. Maybe I'm too cynical.
Yeah. I mean, and I think at the individual level, so that's sort of at the macro level, public health, but at the individual level, I think, parents, especially on the side of early specialization and burnout and too much of it, like parents know that their kids would eat like 10 desserts if they let them because they love it, but they don't let them because they know that's not good for them. But in sports, we still have this thing that more is better, even though the research tells us more is not better. And that more actually doesn't even lead to elite level performance necessarily. But we still, as parents, have a hard time saying like no to the 9 extra desserts in youth sports. We want them to do all the things. So we're having a hard time taking the information we have as parents and like applying it in the sports space.
You get 9 desserts and Tommy John surgery.
That's right.
There's definitely this ethos too about, fear of your child being left behind or not getting the opportunities that is driving a lot of that. And I am in that space right now and having conversations with, my families, and I find it very challenging and hard. And I know about the desserts, right? Like I know about this and I teach about them, and I still find it hard to look in my child's face and say like, no, you're not. I'm not going to sign you up for that extra activity. That's really hard and really challenging on an interpersonal level.
Oh, Hannah, you're just speaking to my parent heart right now. Poor Danny. I'm just dragging Danny along on the parent journey, right? Because he's still in college. He doesn't have his kids. Maybe he will one day. But I'm like, you don't understand, Danny. This is really hard. And it's insidious because it's like rec coaches kind of developing these little select teams in the rec leagues when they're 7 by like handpicking and playing up. It's, do we keep playing with our friends or do we find a healthier system? These little choices become so difficult when your kid's looking at you and saying like, but this is what I want to do. And you know better, right?
Yeah. And I think what gets lost in this shuffle, especially, and I know for me, this was a big thing growing up, was like youth school sports. So in like late elementary school and in middle school, I feel like those are getting lost as well, because that was kind of the perfect combination of competition and being able to play with your friends, right? And it feels like all kids who want to be better and do more in that sport just are leaving school behind, and it's making it less and less competitive and important. And I feel like it's just an underutilized, level now, because I know when I was playing, that was it. Like that was the level, but now it's completely changed.
Yeah, there's an additional challenge, I would say, too, at the middle school and high school level now. Of middle schools in particular have less resources to support all the athletes that want to play. And so not having space or turning away kids. Historically, school was an equitable place for kids to get access, and that is no longer the case. At the high school level in particular, if you want a chance of making high school sports in a lot of places, you have to be part of the select circuit and have that training and background, because those spots are so competitive to get. So there's certainly variability, of course, like across schools, but that is also a pervasive issue that we see in King County specifically too.
Yeah, I think we hear a lot about, like, if I could wave a magic wand, it would be to have unlimited access to sport opportunities in middle school. Like, just hands down. It's just it's the place where that funnel gets real narrow, right? And where we need to open it up. And I think about a sport like ultimate frisbee, which when I did the state of play in 2019, ultimate frisbee was the 3rd most popular sport in King County, which I don't have comparisons around the country, but I think that's pretty rare that ultimate frisbee would be the 3rd most popular sport. And it I think really truly is because Age Up and Disc Northwest and some other ultimate programs made an investment in no-cut ultimate in middle schools in Seattle.
Yeah.
And to go back to one of the original points, not only did that lead to that being a popular sport and kids loving it and hundreds of kids playing? But Seattle is producing the top ultimate Frisbee talent in the country, right? So it's like that, like we let everybody play, and what do you know? Everybody gets really good because everybody's allowed to do it. And so their work, I think, just shows us what's possible if we can find a way to pay for everybody and find the fields and just say no cuts, everybody gets to play. Like Ultimate has a great ethos about that, I think, still in Seattle, and it's something for us all to learn from.
It's so hard looking at some of that data. If you look at 10, you're seeing these higher participation rates, especially among girls. You're seeing a greater variety of sports, and you just slide that little slider over to 13 and you just watch them drop off, right? Suddenly they're not on fields, they're not on playgrounds, they're in malls, right? If they even have a mall, right? Because those have kind of gone away too, where our gathering spaces. And thinking about places where community organizations can make really, really big differences, and you kind of make these points in State of Play, is like, where can you open up that funnel at earlier ages so you don't have that huge backlog right at 13, and then people kind of give up and they're like, well, there's easier things where I don't have to like spend my Saturday on a field in the rain in goose poop, right? Like in the Pacific Northwest, I should say. Anyone listening to this from not here, don't worry, we don't roll around in that for real.
We do spend a lot of time in the rain, though, so
I
you
know.
have to put up with that for sure.
That's like one of my visceral memories of youth sports is just generally being on the ground at 60 acres and just smelling like landscape. Did we lose Hannah?
Shoot, she's frozen.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
let's see if she comes back in. I don't want to lose her for the rest of this conversation. Our power flickered. I don't know if she's on campus, but
Looks like she's at home.
okay. It's still snowing here in Woodinville, so I'm waiting.
Yeah, she's in Issaquah, so it is possible. Let me text her.
Okay. And if we can just keep chatting too.
Okay, let's just see. The power just went out. She just texted me.
Oh, no.
No.
Well, we can keep chatting with you, Julie, and then if it comes back on for her, she can get it on her cell phone too. I don't know if she has cell reception.
Do you want to try?
Yeah, the weather's so gnarly between the rain or the wind and the snow.
She's trying on her cell.
Initially, I thought you said crying, and I was like, oh, it's not worth having tears. It always happens. Yeah, no crying about sport. No crying in baseball.
No crying in baseball.
Man, if she's out in Issaquah, they got a lot of snow out there today.
Yeah, no, I think she's kind of up in elevation a little bit too,
Yeah.
so she probably did get. I wonder if her kids are even home. Did your kids stay home, Kaylee?
We didn't even have a delay, and I think we have like 5 inches out here.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think they must have. I think it's melting off the roads though. So
Yeah, the roads here have been.
if they have to keep him longer, I'm not going to be sad. Well, I think we can keep chatting for a little bit. Danny, do you see any issue with that in editing?
No,
I don't.
it should be fine. Yeah.
Because we can pull the different slides, right? Okay, cool. So we'll just keep chatting. And Julie, there's a bunch of Julie-specific questions we have for you. So I think let's start by talking about State of Play and sort of how you got into that conversation, what sort of precipitated that research specifically. And I want to talk a little bit more about what you're doing now and sort of what sort of differences you see as you pursued that. So what got you started with State of Play?
Well, when I first started at the Center for Leadership in Athletics, I was doing coaching research, and I had my PhD was in education policy, and I've been doing work sort of more in teacher education. There's Hannah.
I
start again so that you can.
Sorry.
do you want me
to try to turn this horizontal like the other one?
I think you will have to disconnect and reconnect with it horizontal for it to fit.
Okay, perfect. I'll come
Sorry.
back. No, that's okay. Sorry. We're at a rental house because we're having some work done on our house. And so I'm like, I don't know where anything is. I don't know what's happening.
Oh no.
Okay. I'll be back in just a minute.
Okay. Sorry, Julie. We'll
That's all right. No problems.
see if it works and then we can keep going.
Okay.
Yeah, because Danny, it's not going to edit correctly if she's in vertical.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Turn this on if you're not wearing headphones. Something.
See if it lets her come back in. Come on. I don't know if we've done one of these where it's like All the tech has been perfect.
Yeah.
This is what we
Well,
get.
this is sort of extra special here with somebody losing their power.
I know. It's always
Unusual.
something, though. You never know. I'm not sure how we waited to get snow until Friday
I know.
the 13th of March. But
Exactly.
I wonder if she can get back on. Okay, well, let's just continue with your thought.
I feel like she's gonna, as soon as I start talking, she's
know.
gonna come back on.
I know.
All right, we'll try it again though. Okay.
Yeah, we can edit out everything in between.
So before I did the state of play, I was working primarily on coaching research, and I had come from out of the College of Education. I got my PhD in education policy. So my very first project was applying teacher education ideas to coaching education, and that was called the Ambitious Coaching Project. But what I was taking away from that was that we could do like everything to make coaches great coaches, and we would still have a problematic system, right? Like coaches were part of a system that was asking them to do things that were not in the best interests of kids. So even preparing coaches really well and having great coach training and coach development and support wasn't going to solve these youth sports issues. And so I sort of, being kind of a policy level, macro level person, was like, I'd like to understand more about the rest of the ecosystem that coaches are in. And I learned about Project Play, which I don't know if you all have talked about that on your podcast before, but Aspen Institute's Project Play, they had already done at that point, I think 5 or 6 state of plays in different locations, these landscape analyses. So chatted with them, and long story short, kind of we raised the money to be able to do a state of play in King County, and I was the PI on that. So I was a little different from some of the other models because I did the research as opposed to Aspen kind of doing the report themselves. Yeah. So that's how that started. And then that led to, it was a community informed project. We had a community advisory board, and then the community advisory board was like, well, we can't put out this report that gives us a D in, with regard to providing sports and activities to kids and not do anything about it. So that's how the King County Play Equity Coalition was formed.
Yeah.
So.
Hannah, welcome back. Julie, let's say, you're between 7 and 10 years. I'm assuming you started this research for State of Play about 10 years ago or so, right?
2018. Yeah. And then it was published in 2019. Yeah.
So you've got some pretty good distance between that study and now. So looking back, has anything actually changed?
I mean, it's a little bit hard to say. I know that physical activity rates in King County have gone up, right? So they dipped at COVID, but now they are back up to above, 2019 levels. If that's a measure, things have improved a little bit from 19% of kids getting the recommended daily physical activity, which is 60 minutes, to 23% of kids. There's still gaps, like major gaps between boys and girls, and that some gaps for youth of color, like there's still some gaps in there, but it is better. In terms of the landscape of youth sports in particular, so not just physical activity, I would say it hasn't gotten better, and it's maybe gotten a little bit worse in terms of cost and exclusivity. What I would say has improved, and I don't know, this might be a little biased, so we'll wait till the second report comes out. But I think there's an increased awareness of the problem at the very least. And it gets a little bit, I don't know, tiring isn't quite the right word, but I think everybody knows that the system is broken at this point. And maybe 10 years ago, we had a sense that the system was broken, but we didn't know why it was broken or what was broken. And now, I think there's a more general awareness. There's more maybe even public awareness of that, legislative awareness, philanthropic awareness. So the systems actors are maybe starting to take notice that this is a problem that we could solve. So I hope that's true. And I think maybe it is a little bit true. I don't know. What do you all think?
Well, I feel like we just got a preview of your second study.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, right.
Which I love. I love that this is where it's going. Where are you at with the second study?
Right at the very beginning. So we have a community advisory board, and we just started the recruitment for the youth survey, the interviews, and we're about to launch a really exciting statewide parent survey. And that one is going to be more about sports, where the youth one is going to be more about neighborhood physical activity and access to opportunities for sort of general recreation and movement. And with the parents, we're focusing more on organized sports, which will be great to have statewide data because that will help us do statewide policy work, which is a hope from the King County Play Equity Coalition and other actors in the state. So that'll be good.
Super positive. I think, well, this was a conversation. Well, I want to talk to Hannah about coaching a little bit. But first, I don't want to forget to ask this because Danny and I have been talking about this a lot. And you've mentioned this twice.
Oh, gosh, what is it?
What is the problem?
Oh,
right? I know what I think the problem is, and it's like 45-fold, right? What is the problem that is preventing kids from accessing sports?
Capitalism? I mean, I don't know. That's the boiled down version, right? We've commodified youth sports. We've taken something that maybe was considered a public good before, or at least was publicly provided a little bit more and seen as a important public opportunity, and we've put it on the market, and now we make people pay for it and pay a lot of money for it. And so that excludes people from it. And in so doing, we've not only made that expensive, but we've sort of left behind, as we were talking about before, more of these public opportunities. So private investment has led to what I would call public divestment. So public schools, parks and rec, they may still care about it, but it's one of the lowest items in most budgets municipal budgets is to provide physical activity opportunities for youth. So I would say that public divestment comes because folks think it's being provided elsewhere, which it is, but it's being provided at a cost and not for free, which is the role that we need our public institutions to play. So I don't know, that's my short version of the problem.
Well, I was going to say, just anecdotally to that, we teach a course in youth development in sport. And when we first started teaching that course, there's I think it was a New York Times article that was youth sport is a $19 billion industry.
Oh, yeah.
And the revised version of that last year was youth sports is a $40 billion industry.
Billion. That's right.
And this year it says we're projected to be 60 to 70 billion.
Yeah.
So just how quickly it is growing and exacerbating, and private equity has entered the chat, and all of those pieces just change the way that we talk about what kind of space it is.
Yeah. I need just a soundbite of me asking Julie, what is the problem? And her saying, and you're right. Danny, did you think that's what she was going to say?
No,
I didn't know that's where we were going.
I think it'll make a great clip though. So
yeah, I mean, I listed out. I think that this is part of our journey. It's like, what is the problem? How do we dig down into the problem? Because you can't find a solution unless you know what the actual problem is, right? And so on the sheet of paper in front of me, I have like 45 factors that have come up in our, how many interviews have we done, Danny? Like 40 interviews at this point between him and I. And none of them have a clear, easy solution. But when you put capitalism at the top, now we have a real problem we can't solve.
Well, exactly. That's why it's like the real root, right?
Yeah.
Well, and that's why one of the things that I have a hard time with is like, when we ask what is the problem, people say it's parents who want blah, blah, blah. It's coaches or program directors who this or that. Like, it's not any one group of people's fault, right? And as soon as we start getting into that blame game, we're missing the real point, which is what capitalism loves for us to do, right? So like the problem is the system we're in, and that, again, back to the regulations, we've decided as a society that it's okay to build a $60 billion
Billion. Up to $70 billion next year.
$70 billion industry on the backs of children. Like, we've just decided that's okay. And whether we are not having the ethical, moral conversations about if it is okay. And a lot of people will say, well, the horses left the barn or whatever on this. Like, we're never going to bring that back in. Well, actually, if we cared about kids, we might. Like, I think it's possible. And I think we have to sort of have the conversation about the ethics of it and the public health part of it. And then we possibly could rein it in, because we've done that with we regulate other markets, right? And we do it because we believe that the regulation protects citizens. And I think that's what we need to do here.
Well, and I feel like, and I want to go over to Hannah here because I feel like so much of this is a conversation that's difficult for parents and coaches and administrators and people who are responsible for building these systems because it is so complex, right? We can't say the problem is capitalism and here's the button we push to solve that, right? We have to unpack decades upon generations upon generations upon decades of habits, systems, access, financial complexities to change that. So I feel like, Hannah, so much of your work, and please correct me if I'm wrong, this is my perception of your work and having read your work, some of your work up until today, I feel like my perception of your work is kind of seeing where coaches, players, and administrators and people responsible for the organizations of these systems can impart change and positive, shifts. How are you seeing that happening? Are you seeing that happening? How do you teach it in your program?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one that we're always trying to assess. I think our dedication specifically to the coaching education space comes from short of policy and new governance, et cetera. We know that coaches are the linchpin around the experience. So if, short again of having regulations around the ways that coaches are trained or can progress in a pathway to be able to do what they do, if we can get them some education, even some baseline foundational knowledge, it's going to put them in a better position to create the spaces for the young people that are better for them and hopefully can keep them in the space longer. Of course, we have the tensions around access and equity and all of those challenges. We also want to spend time thinking about, okay, the people that are there, how do we prepare them for that? And so what we've found is that a lot of coaches are actually good at a lot of the X's and O's pieces. They can diagram up a play. They can talk to you about your footwork. They can help you with those elements. But perhaps what they aren't as strong at is thinking about how do we create psychologically safe spaces? How do we culture build for young people? How do we create spaces that are intense and we can promote competition and have kids grow their skills, but also feel joy and have fun while they're doing it and develop some of those social emotional skills? So a lot of the curriculum that we build is based out of what's best practices out in the field. There's Julie's work. There's a lot of other great scholars who are researching this. And I am not a researcher by nature, actually, and instead like to say, okay, what is out there that we know works? And then how do we put that in formats that coaches can use? And we try to do that in a way that's really applicable, that is specific to context. We work with a lot of school-based coaches and community coaches and try to think what are some of the highest leverage things that we can teach them to shape athlete experience.
And I feel like there's little things too that as you teach coaches to think about the bigger umbrella picture, right? Like what environment are we setting up for kids, and thinking about stepping back and saying, is this actually healthy for this group of children? It sort of boils down to little choices that coaches make, doesn't it? And we've had this conversation with other coaches. I was just talking to an administrator up at Monroe School District, and she was talking about what do we do in the system to change little things that eventually make bigger things different. So she was talking about just omitting Game Changer. What made such a big difference, Game Changer, for anyone who doesn't know, is a video platform and stat keeping platform for many sports, but specifically baseball, used in Little League a lot, and kind of broadcasts out sort of kid highlights, right? And what ends up happening is parents end up sharing it on social media. It becomes this sort of hierarchy of child professional media for 12-year-olds, right? And she's like, this simple change of not allowing that in the space made such a big difference for the kids to think about why are we here? And I'm wondering if you're seeing those small changes making a difference in the coaching education that you're doing, or it being more about bigger conversations around safety and health.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would make the argument that even something like that the omitting Game Changer is challenging a group of people to think about why they've done things
Right.
in a specific way. Like, what is the purpose and why are we doing something? Which is a huge piece of coaches' education because it's a volunteer space at the recreational level often. And even in paid positions, there's not a specific preparation or pathway to get you there. So it's an apprentice model that you kind of get thrown into a position, you try some things. Some of them work, some of them don't. And often we replicate the things that we experienced. And so that's why we see a lot of behaviors in coaching that are maybe not ideal and not even the we know extremely toxic when we see it, but even some of the things that you could do better, you could change something slightly and do it better. I would say that all of those changes are connected to a larger macro piece of just examining the why about like why are we engaging in certain ways and challenging instead of not being willing to take the moment or taking the beat or the pause as an administrator, a leader, a coach to say maybe we can do that differently or maybe there's a better way to do that. So that's what I would say a lot of our coaching education is about is that when we get a room with coaches, often a lot of them are doing some great things. And we're maybe just giving them some language for it or giving them some tools to do some reflection and think about why they're making specific choices. Or if they just don't have the skill set or the toolkit to make good choices. And so can we give them some strategies and some tactics that they can pull from within the space?
Yeah. And I would just add, like, reminding people that they're working with young people. Like, a lot of what we're doing is, like you're saying, Hannah, reminding them of the why we're doing things, but also the who. Like, what does it mean for young people if they're treated like professional athletes? It means that and whether that's posting social media, stats on social media like professional athletes do, or whether that's, actually professional athletes don't even play 6 games in a weekend. We only make kids do that, frankly, or treating their brains and their bodies like they're professional athletes when they're really just 9. And so a lot of the best practice is layering youth development.
Yeah.
Right? What we know about youth, the way youth learn, the way their bodies develop, and reminding people that they're working with youth. And so to take the practices that they have, which maybe aren't bad practices, but we have to do them differently if we're working with young people.
Your program makes me so excited because I feel like in this reporting, we've been looking at kind of the roles of parents and the roles of coaches and, administrators, organizations, other systems, obviously very involved. But those are 2 really important groups who are going to be responsible for making change if we can do it, right? And I feel a lot less hope for the parents. I hate saying it out loud, but I feel like parents are in a position a lot of times where they feel like if we don't participate in the system, our kid loses out. Right. And making those little choices not to let kids participate in that system are really hard. Like I had to tell my kid he couldn't play indoor soccer because he needed a break from indoor soccer. And his body needed a break from soccer for a little bit. And, he's like, why? Why would you make me do that? My friends are all playing. Why can't I do it? So I feel like a lot less hope for the parents because they're stuck in it. The coaches, though, while they're also parents in a lot of cases, they seem to be able to step back and look at the system in a little more sane way. Am I just making that up? Is this possible from coach perspectives?
I would say it kind of has to be like a demand side issue.
Yeah.
Like it has to kind of come from the parents because
Yeah.
I would say coaches who are both parents and they're also the program administrators often, right? Like I think they think they're doing what people want, right? They're supplying things and people are coming. So
Yeah.
I have to have hope for the parents. And one of the things that does give me hope for parents is that I would say in this first state of play, one of the most profound sets of like focus groups we had were with parents who they know, we all know, like we just talked about it at the beginning of this. We're parents. We've all been through it. It felt icky. I always say like driving to Centralia at 4:00 on a Friday afternoon that you have to leave work early to get to a baseball tournament. Like, something's off, like, it. And you get to the sidelines and you talk to other parents and you're like, what are we doing here again? Like, what? Like, everybody has that feeling. And I remember at one of the focus groups, this woman said, like, we got caught in the vortex of youth sports And I felt like we couldn't get our family out of it. And I finally just had to say, like, this is enough. Right. And I think a lot of families feel caught in that vortex. And maybe, Hannah, like, I don't think you feel caught in a vortex because you sort of know, you know enough and you've made selections that are right for your family. But a lot of families don't have they have the education to make the choices for the absolute right programs, and they end up at a program and it sucks them down. We've all seen those Instagram reels of like, right? You welcome to the elite select travel ball 6U program where, you need to pay $7,000 because we're going to Florida this weekend, right? Like that's
Yeah.
what a lot of families feel. And I think there have to be some brave parents who get together and say, like, this is crazy making. What are we doing? And I think a lot of parents feel it, and we just have to give them the freedom and the space to say it and then make the changes that their kids and their families really need.
Mhm.
I don't know. That's very Pollyanna, maybe.
I would agree with you, and this is not research based, but more anecdotal of that. I think this pendulum swung really hard into this place of sports specialization and forcing
Mhm.
kids to choose. And even in this may be because I'm in the space now with my own children, but I think there are more conversations happening within youth sport organizations and with parents saying, like, what is the path, right? Like, can we make a different choice? Like, can we pivot a little bit and can we do this differently? And that's certainly not everywhere, but I have been in some spaces saying, like, how can we rethink this, that things can be a both and, or
Yeah.
in a place where families do have some more choice, or can we play some more middle ground? So I've been in more spaces, I would say, in the last couple of years that are having that conversation, and I think are trying to stuff the genie back in the bottle, or whatever analogy you want to use. But I think there's more of that happening, and so I think I'm with Julie that I think, and that crossover between parents who are coaches and helping run organizations, I think they're a really important part of the equation because they can push more buttons at the same time and to try to move something.
Yeah.
So I would actually add, I know we're sort of at time, but just I think it's important to add that like actors like us are really important in making that happen. And I was in the space too. I tried really hard and was really vocal with my friends and my kids that my kids did not travel for sports out of state until they were 13. We didn't do select or travel until they were 13. It's sort of like wait till 8th so I think we need parents who are willing to stand up and say that. Another thing I've talked to Hannah about is like, and you, Kaylee, I don't know what sports your kids are in, but like we are also often witness to really bad coach behavior.
Yeah.
And if we don't stand up and call it out, like we're complicit in allowing children to be treated in a certain
Yeah.
way. So it's another thing that I've tried to do is like, and that was towards the end of my kids' careers where I felt brave enough to sort of go up to coaches and say that behavior is like, we shouldn't be treating kids that way. So anyway, I think like people like us are the ones who kind of need to be on the front line to deliver
Yeah.
that message about what we can expect for our kids and demand for kids for their health and well-being.
And Danny, you got to go coach kids and tell them good stuff too.
Hey, I've already started.
Okay, good.
Yeah, yeah,
Awesome.
trust me.
So last couple questions here. I think you sort of gave me a segue here, Julie, but what are 1, 2, 3 things that parents, players, coaches, organizers, community members can do to improve the scenario? Give me your top 3.
Write it down.
Yeah, the specific scenario being closing gaps, changing the experience, moving away from specialization.
Let's just say improving the atmosphere in youth sports, right? Whether it's access, safety, opportunity, health, all of these things we've talked about today. How do we improve American youth sports right now? Give me 1 or 2 or 3 things that might do that.
Okay, we can go back and forth. So I'm going to go with public investment. Whether it's, and I mean investment in terms of both like oversight and also financial investment. So I talked before about the private market has invested. So the public public structures and institutions have divested. And so I would say municipalities, state legislatures, like it is time for investment. And that could just be, providing money so that more kids have access. It could be providing oversight so that coaches are trained, like whatever it is, like that's step number one. So any policymaker listening to this, like step in and invest. And I swear parents, like if a, Seattle Parks and Rec decided right now to have a big middle school league, right? Like to, as you said earlier, Danny, like to pick up that slack there, I think people would cheer, right? Like that would be such a huge investment to make and a real winner. That's one.
My first one is a commitment to sports being a youth development space, because we've moved away from it being a youth development space with the ways in which we're treating children, the ways in which we're setting up the spaces, and the ways in which they're getting put out. So I think it's almost like an ethos, conversation, but a recommitment to, and Julie and I say this in the office all the time, what are we doing here? Like, what are we even doing here? But being able to answer the question, say like, we're creating spaces that kids can move their bodies and experience joy, be with friends, like learn some skills. Like that's what we're doing here. And I think we've lost the plot a little bit in what the youth sport is for. And it's not about traveling to tournaments or new uniforms or game changer stats or whatever insert ludicrous item there that we're moving towards. So I'd say like an ethos change.
I'm imagining like a really good Olympia protest in front of the Capitol with like a big gravestone that just says, "What are we even doing here? Youth sports," right? I feel like this is your team motto. All right, Julie,
we did have the first youth sports day in Olympia this year. So yeah,
I didn't know about that. When was this during the legislative session?
Yeah. And we had a youth sports resolution. So this was the first step towards some advocacy that we're doing in the direction I've been talking about, which is some more regulation and just as a starter, some more attention to youth sports as a public health and education and youth development space. So yeah, we had resolutions read on the floor of the Senate and the House about the importance of youth sports and the importance of investing in the adults who work in youth sports. So, which I guess, so another thing I would say is I would like parents to ask, like, what am I paying for? Like when they sign their kids up, like to not be afraid to ask questions about these coaches have first aid training. Have they had a background check? Are they mandatory reporters? Are they trained in this sport? Like I think that's one thing that parents can do to take back some power here instead of just just writing a check, is to actually say, okay, my kid's going to spend a lot of time with you. I might need to know something about these adults, and to apply that demand side pressure so that folks like the CLA can provide these trainings that coaches need. But a lot of times coaches don't seek out the training because folks aren't asking them for it. So just like asking questions about how people are trained that are working with young people and making sure they have at the very least, like the basics, that they're background checked and that they're going to be safe with kids, like just emotionally, physically, psychologically, etc.
And giving the parents the power to ask these questions.
Giving the parents the power, exactly. Letting them know they have the power to ask those questions and that they should. Yeah.
Hannah, you want to give me...
Yeah. This is straight out of the 2019 State of Play and is maybe a bridge of this investment piece. But I think we need to re-envision how schools are a hub and a centerpiece of physical activity. And I mean that in a wide range of like programming. I spend a lot of time talking to athletic directors about the ways in which they can and can't support their coaches and their programming, and their resources are really limited in across the board. And so thinking from K all the way up through 12 and thinking about that pipeline and how we're investing, providing resources in those spaces, getting creative to do things differently, perhaps with some intramural models and more participation. So I'd like schools to be a better landing pad for a wider range of kids.
Last ask, what gives you a whole bunch of hope? This could be about research you're working on or programs you're working on or something you're seeing. What gives you hope in the youth sports landscape right now?
I'll start with something that we were a part of. This is a little bit tangential, but it's coming back around. So we were a part of a big initiative, a national initiative called the Million Coaches Challenge. And that was an investment by philanthropist Susan Crown Exchange that was for 12 organizations or so across the country who were trying to train over 1 million coaches in youth sports. And I think we were really lucky to be a part of that. I think I see hope in that movement, that a private philanthropist invested this much money in this space. And actually that philanthropist is trying to build a case to other philanthropists, both public and private, to continue making these kind of investments. And being part of that cohort was a great learning opportunity for all of us. We're getting to build some national messaging around the importance of coaches and coaching for youth development. And that work is continuing, and they've really brought other folks into the fold. And I think it's growing and moving and increasing visibility, and it gives me hope for sort of a national push here to change things.
That is hopeful.
Yeah.
Hannah?
Mine's a Venn diagram of that, because I was thinking about the King County Play Equity Coalition in King County and the work they're doing. And there are many other coalitions across the nation who are serving as hubs within larger cities. And those groups are convening and meeting and talking. And we similarly in the coach development space, I used to feel quite isolated. And I was like, who else is doing this work? Who else is engaging in this? Does anyone else think this is important? And through the Million Coaches Challenge, through other regional partnerships that we've had in connective points, we're able to collaborate with some of those groups and are all trying to figure out, we're all driving the bus in the same direction. And so we're trying to figure out how to amplify and scale our work together instead of working on it individually. So I think some of the regional and national efforts that are out there, that gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah, that's a really good one, Hannah. Sorry to cut. Just when we first came out with the State of Play in 2019 and started the King County Play Equity Coalition, and then COVID hit, a bunch of these coalitions like us, like King County Coalition, got together, as people did in the pandemic, on Zoom, and there were 4 or 5 of us. And now that is a legit organization, the Coalitions for Sport Equity. It has 25 members. Right. And this is happening. These coalitions are being built all over the country. So I think that's a great call, Hannah. That's another space where there's just, it's a building movement. Yeah.
It really does feel like a flashpoint right now. Danny and I are going to go ahead and pat ourselves on the back that we got involved in this right when everyone's getting really interested. But I think from a really realistic, practical standpoint, this looks like a moment where we're going to see some things change. I hope.
We all hope. Yeah.
Thank you, Hannah and Julie. Thank you for talking with Danny and I. This has been one of my favorite conversations. I feel so much hope from both of you, and I feel like we're headed in a direction where you two are going to be the initiators of change, not only in King County, but in the way people view sport. So thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate it. Hopefully we'll have lots more to talk about when in a couple of years we see another study and more from the CLA.
Yeah, next year, and watch out for some legislative advocacy next session too. So thanks so much. It was great to be here. Bailey and Danny, appreciate you doing this.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to this week's episode of the Youth Sports Project podcast. If you like what you heard, you can find all of our episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube.
At the Youth Sports Project, we explore how youth sports in America are evolving and why that matters. We'll talk with experts in the field about the research, the challenges, and the ideas shaping the future, while documenting the past to better understand where we're headed.
Youth sports are more than just games. They're a window into our culture, our health, and who gets to access opportunity.
Thanks for being part of the conversation.
And we'll see you next time.